Welcome back to the Resolution Room, where we turn tension into transformation through clarity, connection, and consistency. I'm your host, Dr. Nashay Lowe, and this is a space where we explore what's really underneath the moments that challenge us and how they can lead to something more honest, more human, and more whole. So let's get into it. Sometimes the most powerful takeaways don't come from what's said directly, but from the patterns that repeat across stories. In this episode, I want to pull together a thread that's been quietly running through several of our season 1 conversations. You'd heard from Jeremy Atkin, who teaches discipline and humility through jiu-jitsu, Jessica Lassish, who's helping people rethink the stories they've internalized about health, Kara Tyrell, who's teaching parents to show up more intentionally, Dina Chukwemeka, who helped us reflect on the crossroads of our passion and purpose, Brendolyn Carpenter-Player, who honors her quiet nature unapologetically, and from Jay Devoir, who teaches us that confidence isn't about volume, it's about alignment. These guests came from completely different worlds, but when we zoom out, we can see the same lessons underneath. Real transformation begins when we stop performing who we think we're supposed to be and start paying attention to who we are, who we've been, and who we're allowed to become when we give ourselves the time and permission to really reflect. Let's start with the cost of performing. Performing isn't always dramatic or deceptive. Sometimes it's subtle. It's staying in the job because it looks good on paper. It's pretending you don't need rest because you're used to being the strong one. It's putting on confidence instead of building it. Jessica talks about how we're often sold new diets when what we really need is a new relationship with our bodies. And that reframe isn't just about food, it's about everything. So many of us are taught to treat change as punishment. We think we have to earn rest, earn joy, earn confidence. We try to force ourselves into new habits through guilt instead of asking, what would change look like if it came from care, not shame? That question stayed with me, not because it offers a quick fix, but because it invites a different kind of honesty. And that's what I hope you take away from Jessica's story. That growth doesn't have to come from self-criticism. Sometimes the most sustainable transformation starts with learning how to be in relationship with yourself, not just how to improve yourself. Dina reminded us that career paths can become cages, especially when they're built on other people's expectations. It's easy to get caught in the rhythm of achievement. The next title, the next promotion, the next thing that looks good on your resume. But at some point, the question shifts from what's next to does any of this still fit? Dina chose to disrupt the script, even when it was uncomfortable. And that's the deeper invitation her story offers. To pause long enough to ask not just what we're good at, but what still feels right. This isn't about abandoning ambition. It's about redefining success on your own terms. And for anyone listening who feels like they've outgrown the roles that they used to reach for, her story is a reminder that it's not too late to pivot, and it's not too late to rewrite the job description for your own life. These aren't stories of overnight change, they're stories of unlearning. Now let's pay attention to what's really going on underneath the surface. Brendolyn's story challenged a lot of assumptions, especially about what it means to be powerful. She didn't show up trying to be louder or more visible. She showed up as herself, fully, intentionally, and without apology. And in doing that, she reminded us that power doesn't have to come from speaking the most or taking up the most space. Sometimes it comes from knowing yourself deeply and refusing to shrink or stretch to meet someone else's comfort. For anyone who has ever been told that they're too quiet, too reserved, or too different, Brendolyn offered another model. One where honoring your natural rhythm isn't a flaw to fix, but a strength to trust. Her story is a reminder that confidence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. And if you're willing to listen, it will lead you back to yourself. Jay offered something that many people overlook when they talk about confidence. She reminded us that it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to look like charisma, and it doesn't have to look like control. Real confidence often shows up as quiet certainty, a line between what you believe, what you need, and how you move through the world. In a culture that consciously pushes us to show up bigger, Jay's story was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to show up truer. For anyone listening who has confused confidence with performance, or has felt like they were falling short because they didn't match someone else's version of bold, this conversation was an invitation to stop performing and start aligning. Confidence isn't something you put on. It's something you uncover piece by piece when you start living in agreement with yourself. Jeremy's episode stayed with me because it framed conflict in such a tangible, embodied way. Through jiu-jitsu, he teaches that conflict isn't always something to overcome, it's something to understand. He talked about the discipline of staying present and how grappling with another person forces you to slow down and feel your way through, not fight your way out. And in that, there's a deeper truth. That conflict, whether internal or relational, isn't just about winning. It's about learning how to stay centered in the midst of pressure. For anyone who tends to freeze or fight when things get hard, Jeremy's story is a reminder that there's another way. That resolution isn't always clean or immediate. Sometimes it's messy, physical, breath-to-breath work. And maybe the lesson here is that we don't have to fear conflict. We have to learn how to move with it rather than against it. Kara brought us into a space that so many people live in daily but rarely name. The quiet conflict of parenting. Not just the logistics of the chaos, but the internal wrestle between who you want to be for your child and the parts of yourself you're still figuring out. She spoke about parenting not as perfection, but as presence. As a series of imperfect choices made in real time, where repair matters more than perfection, and curiosity matters more than control. For anyone carrying guilt about how they've shown up, or fear about getting it wrong, Kara's story offered relief. Because the truth is, parenting is its own kind of mirror, and when we allow ourselves to reflect honestly instead of react defensively, we get to grow with our kids, not just raise them. Her episode was a reminder that resolution in families isn't about eliminating conflict, it's about staying connected through it. So what does this all mean? When I look back at each of these episodes, these conversations I've had with Jeremy, Jessica, Kara, Dina, Brendolyn, and Jay, I see different lives, maybe even different languages, different lessons, but beneath them all, I see the same heartbeat. Each guest was telling the truth about a turning point, a moment when they chose to stop performing, stop deferring, stop shrinking, and start paying attention. Paying attention to what their bodies were saying, to what their values were calling for, to what no longer fit, and what might be possible if they moved differently. And that's what the resolution room is meant to be about. Not perfect solutions or one-size-fits-all answers, not even just conflict between people, but the space to reflect. And within that reflection, maybe most importantly, remind us that the resolution we're looking for externally usually starts with the questions we're not asking internally. It's about the quiet conflicts we carry inside between who we are, who we've been told to be, and who we're becoming. It's where we give ourselves permission to change, not just reactively, but intentionally. If you're listening to this and something in you feels like it's shifting, know that you're not alone. And know that resolution doesn't always start with the conversation between people. Sometimes it starts with the one we've been avoiding with ourselves. Thank you so much for listening, for thinking deeper, and for letting these stories sit with you. Season 1 is only about halfway through, and this is just the beginning. Let's keep listening differently and doing this work together. As always, thank you for joining me today in the Resolution Room. I'm grateful you're here doing this work alongside me. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to please share. And until next time, keep building in the quiet because that's what will carry you forward.